So we can move on to the Supra, another very popular car. Very specific question. What was your favorite modification that you did on your Supra before or during filmmaking?
Probably the turbo. I mean, I drove that car around. It was a BPU car, basic performance upgrades, which everybody does. They turn the boost up a little bit using a boost controller, maybe put on different fuel injectors so you could, safely turn it up. Front mount intercooler, blow off valves, and exhaust. That was pretty much BPU, basic performance upgrades. And it was a fun car. It was very balanced. In that configuration, I went out and won the Sport Compact Cars very first street car of the year. There was a drag race, an autocross, and a car show in the same day. And so that car took first place. So it was a comfortable car. It was a good car. And then I said, yep, I'm going to need more boost because it's like anything else. You get a little taste of it and you want more. So we did the T66 that Vinny 10 from East Coast. He's a big super builder back in the day. He custom spec'd the turbo for me and sent it over. And me and my buddy put it on in our garage, in my garage. And first time we drove it, I was like, okay, great. And we did a couple days worth of tuning and testing, and then it was just superb. And it just transformed that car. It was small enough turbo that the boost came on early. It was big enough turbo that the car pulled like a freight train. So that was definitely the best mod.
That was what I expected your answer to be. Yeah, was it a Turbonetics T66?
Yeah, it's a Turbonetics T66. Yeah.
And the manifold, which was always something very interesting to me. I'll never forget this. Both of those things are discontinued and very hard to find. I'd say harder to find than a T51 or a T04Z, but the T66 with an RPS manifold, because of that, I have never heard a car. I've only seen one car with an RPS manifold, not with a T66. And I haven't seen, in all my life, except for one car, a car that sounded like yours. Because it had a similar exhaust, and it had that manifold and a similar turbo, I suppose. And I just thought, man, because I get inundated with questions like how to make this car sound like this. And most of the time, thankfully, I can say, well, I did make a video on this already. Sorry, I hit the mic. But for the Supra, I always feel like, I don't know what the modern equivalent is. And I'm not sure if there is one.
Well, you can get an RPS manifold made. I had a viewer reach out to me sometime in the past 12 months and said he reached out to RPS and they made him a manifold. And it wasn't cheap, of course. The RPS manifold came through for a connection. My friend David Jesko has been a Toyota engineer and troubleshooter for the entire time I've known him, over 20 years. He was going out to dealers teaching them how to fix cars, that kind of stuff. He was answering the engineering hotline for high-tech, high-level people who are working on these cars. So he's forgotten more about Toyotas than most people will ever know. So when we were doing this, he said, I'm going to get you one from Rob Smith, and we're going to call it RPS, and we're going to get you this manifold. I said, okay, I trust you. And that's the manifold we put on the car. So it wasn't something that was just off the shelf. There was a guy who found a niche making these custom manifolds for 2JZ applications. And, he had his list of clients, a few shops around the country that carried his product, and I just happened to get one. And then the apex valve, blow-off valve on the car. Between that, the turbo, and the apex blow-off valve and the exhaust, it had a very unique sound.
It did.
Now, I posted a video a couple of months ago, I think you may have seen it, where I showed all the sound files where you could listen to all the actual sound files of the cars. So if you scroll through there, if you have a couple of hours to waste and click on every Supra that they recorded and every Skyline they recorded and the clips and WRXs, you can see and you can listen and you can identify. If you close your eyes, you can identify the car that recording was used from. And yep, that Supra is definitely different than the other Supra that they had recorded, which was a stock twin turbo automatic Supra, which was the black one, which belonged to my neighbor, and it had some upgrades. But yeah, you listen to it; it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. This is my question. This is a lot of my questions kind of stand out because they're very nerdy and specific. But you used for the film spec of the car Lamborghini Diablo orange paint. I've kind of noticed this that you like to use paint from other manufacturers. Like with the Maxima, you did, I think it was a Dodge Viper GTS blue.
Correct.
Do you have any other like manufacturer specific paints that you like beyond those two?
To be honest with you, couldn't care less. And here's why. I'm going after the color, not the manufacturer. Generally speaking, any color I pick is going to be a PPG, a DuPont, or a House of Color. There are some people who are, I don't want to judge unfairly. There are some people who are reluctant to use House of Color paint for whatever reason. I'm not a paint specialist. Maybe it's more difficult to mix or difficult to maintain consistency. Any number of reasons, how it flows through a gun, whatever. But I found the Dodge Viper GTS Blue. I have a lot of experience with the Vipers. And I just thought that would be a good color because it was a 2-stage. It didn't have to be a 3-stage, right? So I knew it would be easy to fix. So there was that. Then for the other stuff, I was picking Lamborghini colors because there were certain cars that I never got out of my head. The Lamborghini Diablo VT, that was that Arancio Ishtar candy orange. I love that color. I said that's what I'm going to paint the Supra if they let me do it that way. I was very happy with the yellow that was on it. It was actually a Mazda RX-7 color, which I believe was a PPG color, but I could be mistaken. It was competition yellow mica, as I recall.
Okay.
And the M3 was a Lamborghini Monterey blue. Instead of using 4 coats, we used 2 coats of blue over the base coat. So that was, somebody dubbed it Craig's Custom Candy Blue, and my buddy Jimmy Lewis put it into a magazine, and everybody's hit me up for the paint code, and I'm like, there is no paint code. It's just a custom thing. And then as far as House of Colors, we needed a paint sponsor for Too Fast, Too Furious, and so we looked at the paint palettes of a lot of different companies, and House of Colors stood out as a brand because they focus on, it's like kind of like what's that guy's name? Jesse James of paint companies. You know what I mean? They were just very cool branding and all that kind of stuff, and that was a brand that we felt we could get behind. And they were cooperative. They provided us everything we needed, and so we picked from their palette of colors.
Okay. This was something that was brought to my attention that, for whatever reason, wasn't already under my radar. Because I did a live stream a little while ago when I was putting together this list of questions so that people could talk to me and just throw their questions at me as I did it. And one of them was about apparently one of the Supra stunt cars that I guess had been restored. It looked like one of the NA cars, and apparently it was selling for $185,000.
It sold at $185,000 at an auction. You have to understand the timing of it. Okay, first off, that the car had mostly a sheet metal interior. No audio, no video, no nitrous, no turbos, didn't have big brakes. It was just a base Supra aero top, right? I believe it was an automatic transmission. I'll have to look. I forget. But this was 2 years after Paul Walker died. Okay, this was like 2015, I think that car sold. You have to check me on that, but it was a couple of years after Paul Walker died. And after Paul Walker died, they weren't making any more Paul Walker-driven cars, right? Because the guy's dead. So, that Supra, it was right at the right time. It was 15 years after the movie came out, about 15 years after the movie came out. And that was the car that started all. The cars from the first movie still to this day are the most iconic for several reasons. Number one, the first movie is always the one we grow nostalgic for. It wasn't an Oscar-winning movie. Let's all admit it, right? Nobody was going to win an Oscar for the performance in that movie. Let's be honest. But it was the movie that started it all. We grew up with it, whether we were 4 years old when we watched it for the first time or 24 years old. We remember it, and we got excited about it. That was the car. The Supra was the cool car because of the way it got introduced. So was the Charger because of the way it got introduced. Some people like the S2000, whatever it was. So they're buying based on emotion, okay? So if you really love Paul Walker and you really love the Supra and one comes available, and that was the only one available at the time, you're going to pay whatever you can afford to pay to get the car.
Yeah.
So I don't begrudge the guy. I think it was brilliant.
I thought it was cool. I didn't know about it because someone told me about it, and they made it the reason why it was a big deal to me is because the person that told me about it made it sound like it was one of the hero cars, and I was like, that's a very small price for one of the hero cars.
You can tell if you look at it, you can Google it, and I think I have pictures of it on my I don't know where, Facebook, I mean YouTube or Instagram.
Yeah.
My
Well, the only reason why I knew it was one of the stunt cars was because they had the hood open. And when I didn't see your car's engine bay, I knew it wasn't one of the hero cars.
Because we know my car is in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only one that had engine modification. People don't understand that, the Hero 1 car is the one with all the fancy stuff on it. And I'm talking about the first movie. It's a whole different discussion for the other movies. But for the first movie, the Hero 1 is the only one with the fancy engine stuff because they rented it from a private owner who would already put fancy engine stuff in the car.
Right.
So the Hero 2 doesn't have the fancy engine stuff because we're never going to see that car's engine, ever. It'll never appear on film. In the interior, most of the stuff will be there intact. You'll have a fake head unit or fake gauges like we did in some of the cars. But for a quick interior shot, because it's 2-second cut, that stuff will be there. The stunt cars, from 20 feet away, that's the deal. If you can't tell it's not the Hero car from 20 feet away, you've done a good job. That's the way it's done.
This is an interesting one. How would you modify the modern 890 Supra?
The modern 90s Supra?
Yeah, like what would you do to improve it?
Take off the radiator cap and jack up a Mark IV Supra underneath it. It's hard for me to get behind that car. I've seen several of them on the road right now, and the proportions are just wrong to me. It's just not right. It's too bulbous. It kind of looks like a feminine hygiene product. I mean, it's really not nearly. I just can't see myself in it. I suppose if you did a wide body kit, Liberty Walk or Pandem or one of those guys, stuck lots of carbon fiber gills and vents and strakes and aero pieces on the outside of it, some Volk TE 37s or some other kind of true hardcore Japanese wheel under it with the right offset, it would look cool. I still wouldn't. It wouldn't be my cup of tea. It's just not. I just can't. I just can't. I'm hoping I change my mind because when the first GTR came out, the R35, I said that thing is ugly ASF. Okay, the interior looks like a truck. They got to fix that. They never fixed it. I said, you know what? After I drove it, I said, yeah, I don't care what it looks like. It's like if you've ever dated somebody, right? And remember the days when we were really young, and maybe it didn't apply to you, but I'm sure it applied to other people. You date somebody and your friends say, I don't think she's pretty at all. I don't think she's pretty at all. I don't get it, man. I don't see the attraction. But she's just right for you. This is what love is about. And the same for cars. You love who you love. You love what you love. Right? That's it. Everything's got positive things about it. So it's just beauty in the eye of the beholder. I'm hoping that I will soften my stance over the years because I really want to like it, because nothing would have been cooler for me to pull up in a new Mark V right after it came out and we said, oh God, he bought another Supra. What's he going to do to it? And then I don't do anything Fast and Furious like. No decals, no aluminum wings, and all that other nonsense. So
yeah. I don't know. Well, this is a tricky one because I don't think there is an answer for this one. But this was such a frequently asked question that I thought we'd try. Story-wise, what was the final fate of the Supra? Was that ever discussed during production?
Let's see. There was no scene after that. As a matter of fact, what people it's hard to put this. That's typically a question asked by a person who doesn't understand the making of movies, okay? So typically speaking, if it's not in the script and it's not seen on screen, then audiences are left to make their own decision about what happened to this character or that thing or the other thing or that situation. I mean, how many times have you watched a movie saying to yourself, I want to see what happened after. What happened after that? What most people don't know is that the movie was supposed to end with the race as they crossed the railroad tracks. It was supposed to stop right then and there. Cut. No hitting the truck, nothing. It was supposed to stop as they crossed over the railroad tracks. Cut. Go to black. Credits. Music. So the fact that we got to see the Charger flip up over the Supra was something that they added at the end because it was actually in the earlier versions of the script, but the discussions were not that. The discussions were it's going to end as a cliffhanger. So, what happened to the Supra? It's not in any script. There was no any discussions after that. When I walked off the set, when I was all done with everything I needed to do for the franchise, I thought to myself, it doesn't matter what happens to the Supra because this movie's going straight to DVD. You know, it's like a home movie. If you ever watch yourself in a home movie and you say, God, I was such a dork, right? Or maybe that's not everybody. Maybe it's just me. But, you know, you say to yourself, this looks silly. And when you watch them film it in the context of you're there all day and then Paul Walker gets up and does something, yeah, man, let's go. And they walk off the camera. And you say, this is so cheesy. It looks like a bad high school play. And then through brilliant construction of the framework and storyline and editing and music, these directors know what they're doing. But the fact that there was no Supra story after that just basically means that audiences have to make their own decision. Now, looking at that now through the lens of 20 more years of history with the franchise, what I hope to find out is out of the end movie that somehow Vin Diesel is walking his son Jack and or Brian and Brian's son Dom or whatever, what he named Jack, out to a shed, a barn, on their 16th birthday, and they open it up and say, here, I got something for you kids. I open the door, and there's the Supra, and there's the restored Dodge Charger, sitting next to each other, right? And then they pull the covers off, and then the two boys look at each other and say, which one do you want? Which one do you want? And that's it, end. And that sets it up for a whole other generation. So we don't know what happened to the Supra, but in the movie world right now, it is TBD.